Welcome! You are listening to the CRM Success Show, where you will hear from CRM executives who have overseen some of the most interesting and complex CRM implementations. Your hosts, David Masri and Kira Whitey, will be bringing you real stories, real insight. Follow along on social media for updates on new episode releases, exclusive content, and much more. Enjoy the show and thanks for listening.
Welcome to the CRM Success Show, where we deep dive into CRM success and failure, delivering real stories with real impact. I'm Dave Masri.
And I'm Kira Whitey.
And today we're talking with Jason Belote, the Vice President of Technology at Vari. So welcome, Jason.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We're going to start off real simple, Jason. No preparation needed for this one. Give our listeners today a little bit of an overview of your role, what Vari do, and a bit about your background and time with the company, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the VP of Technology here at Vari. So I kind of own all of the technology components within Vari. So that includes our business systems, which a big part of that is Salesforce. We have a large Salesforce footprint. And then we use SAP for our ERP, Boomi for our middleware, and then a lot of the Microsoft tools for our BI and analytics solutions. And then additionally, I have the IT tech, operations and support team that supports our desktop computing and our network and our Wi-Fi and our collaboration tools. And then additionally, cybersecurity kind of rolls up to me. And so that's my current role at Vari. And so maybe just a little bit about Vari. So in simplest terms, Vari is an office furniture company, but we feel like we're much more than that. So we consider ourselves a workspace innovation company, really on a mission to create workspaces that elevate people. And so making them happier, healthier, and more productive. And so that's either, at home, in the office, or in one of our VariSpace locations. And so we're really striving to bring speed, simplicity, and quality to the office furniture industry. So really trying to revolutionize the office furniture industry. And so that's kind of the sales pitch about Vari. But one thing that, and we can get into it now or maybe later, I would love to kind of share the origin story of Vari, which may be interesting for the listeners.
Let's share it now. Let's dive into it. No time like the present.
Yeah, so we were actually originally called Varidesk. So some of your listeners may be familiar with the Varidesk product, but we were actually incubated back in 2011, 2012 within our sister company, Jimmy. And so Jimmy is a inflatables company. They make a lot of the inflatables that Lowe's and Home Depot sell at Christmas and Halloween and things like that. But long story short, one of the founders of Jimmy was having back problems, and so he would stack up boxes on his desk and put his laptop on just so he could stand and work and relieve the pain in his back. And so at the time, my CEO and then the leader of product at Jimmy looked for a good solution for him, and so they ordered a number of office or standing office furniture contraptions, they called it, to try to give him a solution that would help. And so they would come in a million pieces and be low quality. And so they were a product company and kind of product minded. So they're like, we can do something better than this. And so that's when they invented the Varidesk. And so for anyone that's not familiar with what that is, it's a desktop product that goes onto an existing desk and then allows you to raise it and lower it to be able to stand or sit as you work. And so really we invented that category. And so that was our sole product, and Varidesk was formed around that product. And so for the first 5 or 6 years, that was our only product, and it grew like crazy and really kind of caught fire. We sold it all around the world in hundreds of countries, and at the time we were in like 95% of Fortune 500 companies, and so we sold it direct to consumers and a lot of direct to businesses for that standing solution. And so that took us a long way. And then in 2018, the company made a pivot and wanted to get into the full office furniture space. And so what that meant is we went from that one product to hundreds of products, office furniture products, to be able to outfit a whole office space. And so that includes things like standing desks, movable walls, conference tables, marker boards, really anything you would need to outfit an office. And so with that was kind of a major pivot. And so that's kind of where Salesforce got introduced, and I can talk a little bit about that later. But really, we brought on an inside sales team, and we were, firing up a B2B sales motion. And so we knew we needed to evolve our systems and kind of go the next level. And so that started in 2018. And then in 2019, we entered the commercial real estate space with our VeriSpace concept. So that's our space as a service offering. The first one we did was actually the old Zales headquarters in Las Colinas that had stood empty for many years. And so we bought that, redid it all, and kind of started our first VeriSpace concept there. And then we opened a building in Southlake, did the same thing, kind of a building that had been on the market for a long time. We bought it, redid it, and turned it into VeriSpace Southlake. And then the VeriSpace Capel, where I am today, we actually built from the ground up. And so this is our third VeriSpace, but also serves as our corporate headquarters. And so that was 2019. And then in 2020, I'm almost done. In 2020 is when we rebranded from Veridesk to Vari. And that was really just to kind of showcase, that we did a lot more than just the Veridesk product, which we were known for up till then. And so that happened in 2020 with the launch of Salesforce.
Fantastic. I don't think I'd be forgiven if I didn't ask the obvious question. 2018, 2019 transformed the in-office experience that a lot of us faced, right? With the pandemic. I never worked remote up until then in my career. And obviously you guys are investing and pivoting to this market where you're relying on people being at their desk.
Yep.
So what was that like? There must have been like a panic button hit at some point. How did you pivot, just from like a business perspective, before we dive into Salesforce? But what was that like, navigating that time?
Very interesting. The timing was definitely challenging. So, but luckily we kind of went live with Vari.com and kind of did the rebrand literally in February of 2020, and we know what happened in March. And so luckily we were on a new robust platform to help support e-commerce. So obviously our work from home e-commerce business took off during COVID, but our other strategy for our B2B sales definitely didn't take off as fast as we expected. And so I mean, to be transparent, it's that's part of the business. Is that's been a challenge, or was a challenge for several years after 2020. And so we continue to kind of navigate the waters. My CEO has a lot of great sayings that he kind of throws out to help motivate us. And during the time, one of them was just keep rowing. And so anyway, so we powered. We've been powering through a lot of things, and that's happened in the world, and macroeconomic things, but we keep kind of plowing forward. But so it did help that we were on Salesforce for the e-commerce kind of spike that we saw in 2020, but it definitely has challenged that B2B strategy.
So you've got 3 physical locations. So that's a model that maybe is not unfamiliar to many. Co-working type spaces. Are you doing private spaces where it's like the whole floor is yours, or is it co-working, or an element of both?
So it's really kind of in between traditional sublease and co-working. And so they're all Class A buildings, so really nice buildings with front desk and gyms, and some of them have cafes, so all the services. And so we really cater towards companies that will lease space within VeriSpace. And so some of the differentiators are we do shorter term leases, and with all the full amenities, plus it's obviously fully furnished, or mostly usually fully furnished with our furniture, so it's kind of a turnkey solution. And so one of our core values is flexibility, and so we do the short-term leases to be flexible with companies, and if they grow, we can add space to it, or if they contract, we can reduce space. And so there's a lot of concepts, but that's kind of the key thing is Class A buildings with lots of amenities, a lot of flexibility, really easy for companies to come in, get space and not have to worry about going and buying furniture and all of that. So we try to keep things simple for companies.
Good. Well, if you guys open up a hub in North Dallas, let me know. We might be interested in joining you in a bit of in one of your spaces, preferably Frisco. But all right, cool. So Salesforce.
I don't know if we have any in mind, but yeah.
TBD on the roadmap. Salesforce. How are Vari, apologies, using Salesforce today? How many users? What products are you using? High level.
Yeah, so so I like to say we have a lot of breadth. We don't have a huge user base. We're a smaller company. Kind of at the peak, I think we had like 350 users. We're smaller than that now, but we do have a breadth and really a cross cloud implementation. And so kind of how it started when I joined in 2018, and we kind of went through a little bit of a CRM selection process, but the original goal was Sales Cloud and Service Cloud for our sales and CX teams. And we kind of initiated that, got approval to get started. And then kind of after that, we decided to really partner with Salesforce and kind of go all in. And so that's when we added Marketing Cloud and then also B2B and B2C commerce. And so really our whole front end of our company, kind of the front office of our company, uses Salesforce kind of wall to wall from, sales to CX to operations to accounting to, e-commerce, et cetera. So really we use it across the board.
Cool. Yeah, real cool. So going back to 2018, I guess you guys decided to do B2C. Did that kind of like really help you guys when the pandemic hit? So that was right then and there. Did you like see like an uptick of home office setups, and then I guess maybe.
Yes, absolutely. So we actually we launched B2C. It was actually the last work stream of our rollout of Salesforce. It was the last thing that we implemented, and definitely the biggest one because we not only implemented the new technology, but we also did a full rebrand from Veridesk to Vari, and so that had a lot of creative and content and all of that stuff that went along with it. But yes, it definitely helped us because we were on a previous platform that wasn't near as robust, and so being on a super stable, robust e-commerce platform definitely helped. And we did definitely that over that first year we saw a big spike in home office purchases. So it was definitely good timing for that part of the business, as we talked about earlier. Not as good for the B2B shift that we were going through.
Yeah, that's how the world goes, right? And now with all the tariff stuff, you guys impacted by that, or that can also force you to pivot?
Yes, we're trying to figure that out, like a lot of companies. So we do manufacture overseas, and so so tariffs will definitely be something that we're looking at and trying to figure out our strategy on. But that'll be coming out here pretty quickly.
Yeah, so many unknowns. It must be difficult. Like you don't even know what's going to cost in what country.
Yeah, and how it's going to change over time, and so it's definitely not an easy problem to solve.
No, not at all. So going back to the beginning, I guess. So you guys decided you needed a new platform, and then ultimately chose Salesforce. Can you like give us a little bit about one, what was the driving decision between that said, hey, we need a switch, and then the kind of decision making process and how you ended up landing on Salesforce.
Yeah, so we were previously on NetSuite. So we used NetSuite for our ERP, like all our supply chain functions, and then the team used their CRM. But it wasn't well integrated into their process. I would say they lightly used it. And so as we were making the pivot and adding, building out a internal sales team, we really knew, the sales CRM part and was really important to kind of have a good platform and really kind of bring all of our processes together. They were kind of disjointed at the time in NetSuite. And so that was really the driver, just to help support the strategic pivot that the company was going through. And so the first thing we did when I joined was do kind of a CRM evaluation. And so obviously NetSuite was a candidate. We also looked at Sugar CRM and Microsoft Dynamics and then Salesforce. And so I haven't gone through my history, but I had a lot of experience in history with Salesforce, and so maybe I was a little biased, but we did try to do an unbiased evaluation where we brought in vendors and did a scorecard and had people kind of score it. And Salesforce, just from a features and functionality and flexibility and ability to recruit resources and build a team, was by far the top solution. And so that's what we chose to go with.
Okay, cool. One of the things you mentioned when we spoke, I guess the pre-interview, was you had a series of guiding principles that you felt was very instrumental into your success. You wanna tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, so it was actually our partner at the time actually helped facilitate this for us, but it was really a kind of a North Star visioning exercise. So the partner was West Monroe. I'll kind of give them a call out, but they led us to a great exercise at the beginning of the program where we kind of brought in some key stakeholders and executives and sat down and had a discussion to, identify and kind of answer some of the questions of, why now and what are the benefits and what are our guiding principles for the project. And so, really why that was important is one, it ensured we had executive alignment, which is super critical, but also set the vision and kind of answered some of those questions and kind of put it down on paper and then established the guiding principles for the project. And so just to share some of what those were, so it was challenge the status quo, keep it simple, leverage best practices, configure over customization, and manage change of employee processes. And so those were our key principles. And so where that was valuable for me as somebody kind of in the trenches as we're delivering the solution is sometimes you get down into the weeds and you're trying to solve a problem or solve a requirement. And so sometimes it's good to take a step back and say, all right, we said we want to keep it simple. We said we wanted to configure over customize. And so how about this solution versus that solution? So it's just a way to kind of ground yourself as you get into the throes of the project to be able to kind of make sure you stay kind of as you intended kind of going into the project.
So, was there ever an instance that, or maybe you can give us like an anecdote of when like you were struggling with a decision and then the guiding principles really is what made right or drove, I guess, the decision, at least with the
Yeah, so
tipping point.
yeah, I don't remember a specific example that, there's multiple examples. That kind of the most common one is where you get a business requirement and and then the team is kind of going down to kind of figure out how they solution it. And sometimes it's really easy to over engineer things and make things more complex than they need to be. And so, as you identify that you or the team kind of doing that, it's just, take a step back and think about it from a different perspective and see how we can simplify. It's a lot harder to make a simple, elegant solution that solves the problem versus a really complex, heavily customized solution. And so just being able and being able to negotiate with it was kind of a card we could play with the business of, hey, we all agreed this is how we were going to build the system, and here's why that's important in the future, right? We want a tool that we can support and maintain and continue to be agile moving forward. And so that's why we want to do these things. And so, how about this option versus kind of going down this direction?
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, great. So, you chose Salesforce, you got your guiding principles. I guess next is what you decide on your MVP, or did you go big bang?
Yeah, so we definitely used a kind of an agile approach, and we really broke it into 6 major work streams. And so the first one we kicked off, and it was late 2018. It went live in 2019, but was a basic. We called it the sales MVP, or minimal viable product. Uh, and so that was just we wanted to get some basic sales CRM capabilities into the sales team's hands, and so that was account management, lead management, opportunity management, just really a way for them to manage their customers and their pipeline and their kind of how they were managing their leads. And so that was a couple 2-3 month project where we kind of did some data migration and got them up and running on that. So that was phase one. Do you want me to go through all the work streams?
Sure.
that'd be helpful.
Yeah.
So that was the first one. The second phase was kind of sales part two, and so that's where we implemented CPQ and then built some of the integrations to our ERP to do things like syncing customers and some other things. And so that then allowed the sales team to do more of their end-to-end process where they could have their opportunity, create a quote and kind of go all the way through with them. And then the third phase was Service Cloud plus really integration to all of the channels we get orders from. And so Service Cloud was pretty straightforward. So that was case management. We also integrated Vonage into Salesforce to kind of have a seamless experience for them. And then we built a lot of integration from our e-commerce site, as well as some of our reseller and marketplace channels that we get orders from. So things like Amazon and CDW. And so the way we kind of built an order management process with CPQ. Salesforce order management wasn't out at that time, but so we kind of built our own, and so that all those channels fed in through Salesforce and created a quote, and then that quote would then flow to NetSuite at the time to kind of create the order and do the fulfillment process. And so the reason we did that is because we wanted our CX team to have a consistent way to service those orders. So if somebody placed an order on the website and then called in and wanted to make a change to it, it gave them the ability to kind of visibility to all those orders and make the update and then transmit it to NetSuite for fulfillment. And so we kind of built we call it Order Management Lite in Salesforce with Service Cloud implementation. And then the fourth phase was our B2B commerce platform. So really this is for our corporate customers to go in and buy. It's kind of like Amazon Business, but so they get an account, they can go in and buy with their negotiated corporate discount, and you can buy on terms and some of those kind of corporate things. It's really kind of a buying portal for them. And then we implemented Marketing Cloud to replace Marketo. And then the final phase that I alluded to earlier was our B2C commerce, which turned into Vari.com and was a part of the whole rebrand. That was by far the biggest work stream because like I said, we had to do the rebrand plus implement the new technology. So that kind of, some of those weren't serial. We did a lot of those kind of in parallel.
Yeah, I think you said Vari.com went live in 2020.
Correct. Yeah,
So you got
February of
through all
2020.
this in 2 years?
Less than 2 years. Yeah. So it was quite a lot.
Decent effort.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one more question, I guess I'll hand it off to Kiro. In terms of like planning, was this planned up front? These kind of 5 stages?
Yeah, we did a lot of planning up front. Like I said, it kind of evolved over time. So we were originally focused on sales and service, and then we layered on the Marketing Cloud and commerce. I mean, we didn't have the full plan from the beginning, but it kind of evolved as we went along. We definitely had a plan for the sales and service part, and then we added on the commerce and marketing piece and kind of wove that into the program.
So in terms of building a team to tackle this, I'm assuming at the start 2018 you had who knew Salesforce, but not really developers implementation. You guys go like the SI route. Did you build a team hybrid? I know you mentioned West Monroe.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, tell us
So
about
we
that.
so we did both. We definitely. So I did join as a team of one, and then we actually converted some of our NetSuite admins and kind of they converted over and got trained up on Salesforce. So they definitely learned through the implementation process. We then also hired a couple of experienced admins throughout, and then yes, we leveraged partners that kind of help us and definitely kind of fill some gaps for us. So West Monroe helped us with the sales MVP and CPQ project. We actually did the majority of Service Cloud all in-house. so we did the case management piece, and then we had a lot of integration work. We were actually on Jitterbit at the time, now that I remember. So a lot of Jitterbit integrations that we use our internal integration team to do. And then we use partners for B2B commerce, Marketing Cloud, and B2C commerce. We use Live Area for the commerce and marketing, and then West Monroe for the sales service, and that they actually helped us with the B2B commerce as well.
Okay, cool. Go ahead, Kira.
So a lot of good stuff there, Jason. I'm curious, just before we go into kind of the success and how did it go and your opinion on that, how much did your background prior to Vari impact some of those decisions, how confident you were about delivering those 6 phases in 18 months? You did, some of our listeners might, when they check out your LinkedIn profile, they might not go far back enough, but to realize that you did work at Salesforce back in 2006. Do you want to quickly tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, and so I've been doing CRM my whole career. So I actually started with Siebel Systems so out of college I was a consultant implementing Siebel Systems at enterprise companies. Some people may not know what Siebel Systems is, but it's really it was the on-premise CRM before Salesforce. So I may be showing my age a little bit, but that was the pre-Salesforce go-to CRM solution, and so I did that the first part of my career. And then my last project at that consulting company is when I got introduced to Salesforce. And I honestly really kind of fell in love with it and loved it. And so I actually took a job with Salesforce's small to medium-sized business consulting group. And so this was back in 2006, 2007. So Salesforce was very different from what it is now. It was a pretty basic CRM tool, like a core CRM tool for sales and service teams. And so I was there. So it was small to medium-sized business. So it was a lot of really small projects. So 100, 200 hours. And so I'd work on 4 or 5 at a time and kind of roll through them. So I worked through a bunch of projects, which was interesting and good and challenging and all those things. Very different from implementing enterprise Siebel projects. So it was definitely a good change. And so went through that and was there for about a year, and then I actually got left there. I got recruited to Sabre to kind of lead their CRM team. They had been one of my clients at my original consulting company, and so I went back there and spent 10 years there, and so did a bunch of things there. Always owned CRM, originally Siebel, and then helped the transition to Salesforce at Sabre, but also had a bunch of other technology teams along the way. But that's kind of a brief synopsis.
Good. So all that experience, and especially the experience with Salesforce, where I think you mentioned you worked over 40 projects, including a Salesforce project at Tesla, who at the time again were a very different company. So all that knowledge and expertise, obviously with the help of the right partners, and the team, you're able to deliver 6 work streams in 18 months. How did it go? Quite simply, what are your thoughts? How did it go overall?
Overall, I was super proud of what we accomplished. And so built and still have an unbelievable team that made it possible. And just the company culture, embrace, like one of our core values is embrace change and believe it's possible. And so a very positive environment, which definitely helped. Obviously, there was things that were challenging and didn't go as well as we would have hoped, and definitely things that went good. Work streams that were better than others, but overall, I'm super proud of the work we did and kind of what we accomplished in a very short time.
So a big goal of our podcast is to help listeners potentially avoid mistakes or overcome challenges that they might not have thought about yet. So could you share a little bit more about some of those challenges that perhaps you didn't take into consideration at the time, for whatever reason, turned out to be a challenge when they shouldn't have been? Could you give us some examples?
Yeah, so I mean, as I reflect back, I think once again, I do think having that North Star visioning was super helpful. So I definitely recommend that when you're embarking on a big program. Um, Thinking about which work streams went better than others, I think the work streams that we went into more prepared uh, were more successful. So work streams that we had in-house knowledge both on the technology and the business side of kind of an experience implementing systems where we kind of had an idea of where we wanted to go. So we were, as we were working with partners, we were driving requirements versus the partner pulling requirements from us. Obviously we hire them because of their expertise and their experience, and so we leverage that. But we had a good idea, and oftentimes and I can give kudos to our VP of e-commerce. He came to the B2C project with a whole set of requirements, day one, and so he knew exactly what he wanted and why, and was able. That was just really helped kind of kick off the project, and kind of doing some of the you know legwork up front really made the whole project successful. So definitely kind of going, making sure you have the right people on the team from an IT and technology perspective. Executive alignment's super important. So that's kind of some of the bigger things. I think the things that bit us the most, which I may do a little bit differently if I did it again, was and Dave may appreciate this, but just the data part of the project, the data migration, uh, and making sure we have the right approach and tools, and kind of starting that early. A lot of times you start with a functional piece and the data piece comes later, but kind of getting those work streams, excuse me, spun up early is super important, because it always, to do it right, it takes time and effort, and you want to start that early. And then also, just if you're going to have a lot of integrations, that's another kind of long pull in the project. And so make sure you have enough resource and you allocate the right amount of time to kind of do those integrations right, because that's what helps the project be successful.
Hmm. And I think one of the takeaways I've taken so far is the notion of simplicity. Even going back to the vision of the business, which is simply revolutionizing how workspaces are defined, designed, delivered. Right? It's simple. You talk about keeping things simple throughout. Right? Phase one was just getting the simple concepts of Salesforce up and running, so you can start to see ROI. Yeah, you used a lot of Salesforce, right? It might have started out simple, perhaps as, oh, we're just going to use it for sales generation. But I mean, if you look at where you are 8 years later, or at the time, 4 or 5 years later, you don't use Salesforce simply today, right? Use it for everything. Do you want to tell us a little bit about kind of what surprised you about your growth and duration now that you're kind of reflecting on this period of implementation in the 2020s? How much you've evolved since then?
Yeah, I mean, we still try to. I mean, maybe it's easier said than done, but we do still try to keep things simple. From a so we're still advocates of declarative config versus code. We do write code for our integrations is kind of the main area we do it, and then in our commerce platforms we do development. We also the team is we try to stay disciplined and make sure we dedicate the right amount of time to tech debt. So we work on kind of a couple different kinds of work. So we have project work where we're implementing new stuff that are kind of larger initiatives, and then we work on small enhancements, which are just small requests from the business, and then we try to make sure we have a percentage of time dedicated to just tech debt, which is really, we're a small team, so it's really easy to kind of get consumed with those business facing requirements. But I think it's super important to kind of maintain your house and kind of keep things, make sure you make time to keep the system stable. Because yeah, I mean, we've been in the system 6 years now, and so it definitely over time it gets more and more complex. And then like data, like we have last year we implemented a data really data delete process of what data we can purge from the system. And so just over time, like right when you go live, you're not worried about those things, but as you continue to mature, tech debt and data retention and some of those things become more and more important.
With everything that was going on, we talked about this earlier, but with things outside of your control, i.e., the pandemic, having that, and then maybe the shift from B to B2C during that time as more people are working from home. Did you have to pivot what you were doing therefore with Salesforce? Like, for example, did Commerce Cloud take a higher priority? Did one of the phases all of a sudden make it higher up the list in terms of priority and urgency to accommodate and react to what was going on outside?
I mean, definitely. I mean, Commerce Cloud is a big important part. I'm trying to think if there was something specific um, to the pandemic that we changed. Definitely from a business perspective. I mean, it influenced some of the products we kind of rolled out and innovated on. So we did separation panels and stuff like that. Some of that comes to mind. We did. I mean, maybe something that comes to mind is we did implement a perks program, kind of a work from home program for companies to kind of give their companies a perk where they can go onto Vari.com with their company email and buy stuff for their home. And then we did some programs with a couple of companies related to their work from home policy and to help facilitate their employees to buy furniture for their home office. So we definitely did stuff like that. We still continued to lean into the B2B space and making sure we have processes and procedures in place to help support that part of the business so that we continue to do that, today. So it's kind of across the board. Nothing drastic, I would say, from a technology perspective. I mean, I think luckily we were on the future state platform before that hit. It would have been a lot tougher if we were on some of the older legacy stuff that we had before.
I might be skipping ahead to what's next, but you mentioned order management. You built in-house a version of that because it wasn't out at the time. But I also know you mentioned, to us, that's potentially something that's on the roadmap for you guys later this year, going into next. I guess, what do you think were or are some of the limitations of what you were able to build in-house? And it's kind of, I guess what I'm asking is, when do you know when to stop building and buy something else? Is ultimately what I'm trying to ask for our listeners.
Yeah. So, I mean, the main reason we would look to order management is because we would be able to tap into the innovation and all of the, to be able to do the same thing that Salesforce Order Management does, we'd have to go spend a lot of time and effort to build it custom. And so that's kind of, really taking advantage of their innovation and capabilities that they're building for all their customers is kind of, the key thing. We kind of built our order management system and we've, enhanced it around the edges, but we haven't dramatically improved the experience, both for our internal teammates as well as our external customers. And so we want to make that, experience of how customers interact with Vari, top notch. And so that order management just has a lot of capabilities that would help us kind of down that journey. It would be a lot harder and more difficult to kind of continue to customize what we built to do that.
Understood.
Awesome. So I do want to ask you a couple questions about your data practices. How did you end up landing on Boomi? It's one of those ETL tools that you know it just doesn't get as much traction as say some of the other ones. It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we're super happy with it. We, like I said, originally in 2018 we were on Jitterbit, and then we spent a little time on some other platforms. I mean, to be honest, the VP of technology before, or a couple before me that I reported to, we both were from Sabre, and we use Boomi at Sabre, and we're happy with it. And so I mean, we I have nothing but good things to say about the platform. It's been super successful for us, and we do a ton of integration. So not only between our CRM and our ERP, but also with all the marketplaces I talked about, and then our 3PL, which our third party logistics provider, the warehouse where all products are at, and so we exchange data with them for every order we have on, whether the status of the order, and send it to them to fulfill, and then they send status back. So we have quite a bit of integration built out, and it's been very successful for us.
Yeah, and definitely better than Jitterbit.
Yeah.
So you started right. Phase one, or track one, whatever you want to call it, was Sales Cloud. You moved your accounts and contacts over, I guess, from NetSuite, but you didn't build the integration till later.
Correct.
Like, you planned for that in advance. Any struggles? Like, one of the issues you run into, like, if you migrate data from an ERP and you don't do the integration, did you kind of end up with conflicts, right?
Yeah,
How did you guys handle that?
and that's kind of one of the areas that I think we could have done better. Is not necessarily the choice to do the MVP first, but just our whole data migration approach. Um, we've gotten a lot better. So now all of our data migrations, we have a lot of SQL scripts, and we do a lot of processing of the data before the actual migration in SQL. So to me, like what we talk about is like the ideal data conversion is you do all the work up front, and then on conversion day, you just press a button and it just works. That's a very simplified way to explain it. But um, we we didn't necessarily use that approach in the original data migration. It was a lot of data manipulation and spreadsheets, and VLOOKUPs and extracts. And so kind of looking back, if I were to do it again, I would have tried to do it more like we do today. Um, and so that's kind of, so definitely was part of the challenge with that rollout.
I mean, well, I was more asking about, I guess, the supplemental or the secondary rollout of the integration with NetSuite. Like, did you like plan up front and you had the NetSuite IDs already in Salesforce, or did you
Oh
have to go
yes,
back, match them up,
yeah,
and then
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, so we used the primary keys or whatever from NetSuite, and loaded that when we loaded the data in Salesforce, and then there was a little bit of obviously matching up and syncing up once we built the integrations.
very cool. And I assume, well, you had to do a secondary migration because people go in NetSuite to make new records.
Yeah, I mean, we did, yeah. So like one time, and then Delta updates, and we had migrations throughout, because we, first was sales, and then was the CX team, with Service Cloud. So there was some data migration related to that. And so there's been, and then even Commerce Cloud and Marketing Cloud, there's data migrations involved.
Looks like we lost Kira. Hopefully he'll be back. Yeah. So I mean, it's interesting because it's one of the things that you really got to plan up front, right? Because again, what happens? You go live, then you have a prospect. They're in Salesforce. Then you close that. They got to be created in NetSuite. The integration doesn't exist because you got to create it manually. Got to make sure, I guess, someone types in the NetSuite ID manually in Salesforce. Just thinking ahead for when you build the integration. Yeah, a lot of planning has to go into that. Um, so it's also interesting. You mentioned start early. It's actually one of the guiding principles in my book. When I
Oh,
and then also all your transformations is code. It's one of them too.
yeah, okay. All right,
Um,
we're aligned.
it's one of them is fix code, not data, where possible,
Yep,
right?
absolutely.
Particularly with data migration. Okay, let's hop on to, like, yeah, some of the lessons learned. Um, so if you were starting over, like, what would you do different?
Uh, what would I do different? Um, so I think it would be to do some of the things we just talked about. Um, I think the way and sequence we rolled it out worked. Um, probably take a little more time. I mean, like you said, 18 months was fast, so we could have probably built in some more time to make sure we we definitely had some folks that burned the midnight oil to make it successful. So I'm super appreciative of that. But probably bake in a little more time. Focus on, like we talked about, focus on data early. Make sure we have uh, enough resources to build integrations and kind of have that planned accordingly. And then in certain work streams, I don't want to kind of get into details, just maybe do a little more due diligence up front before the project kicks off to make sure we're kind of aligned on our, what the requirements are and what we want to accomplish with that phase. But I think just address some of the things I already mentioned.
Any light bulb moments throughout the project? Any of the 6 phases where you're like, this is all making sense now?
Light bulb moments.
More sales?
Yeah. I mean, so I mean, I'll go back to this. So the company culture, I think, was super helpful. Like, I don't think we could have done what we did in some companies but just to believe it's possible, and that kind of motto, and open to change, and that sort of thing was really successful. So like I can just picture in my mind some of our rollouts. We had we set up a desk, some of our desk, and kind of a Apple style kind of walk up and ask questions. And so we spent a lot of time on change management and communication, and how we supported the releases once they went live, to make sure. I mean, luckily we're a pretty small company. We were all local here, and so our majority of us were local here, and so people could just walk up and ask questions. And so I think some of those things went really well, and would be awesome to try to replicate on future projects. But so that's probably an aha moment. I think.
What about?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, just I guess maybe an aha moment was just, you buy all this Salesforce, and you think, I mean, obviously the core stuff is well connected, but we also had Demandware and Marketing Cloud, which are separate technologies. And so there was some challenge, you kind of expect them just to be magically connected. So that, we definitely, Boomi kind of played our Jitterbit at the time, played a role in kind of doing some of those connections. So maybe that was an aha that at the time. It's gotten better over the years, but some of the clouds didn't connect as seamlessly as we'd like. So those are probably a couple of them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. If you had to do it all again, what would you do? What would you do differently this time around?
Dave just asked that, but so I think it's a lot of the things I've already talked about throughout the podcast. So data, I would use a different approach for data. Start earlier, make sure we had the right skill set in house to do a lot of the data transformation and preparation with scripts versus trying to do it manually in Excel and VLOOKUP. So have a better, more robust data migration plan, and then make sure we have the right time and enough resources. We had the right resources, but enough resources for the integration work, because we definitely kind of overloaded those resources through the project. And then just making sure we definitely had certain phases of the project where we went in with well prepared, with kind of pre-requirements ready and kind of a good idea of what we want to do, but some of them we didn't have as much. So making sure we had that in place are some of the key things.
So you mentioned throughout the episode as well, some key advice that I think would be good for other organizations, having solid resources in-house, leveraging the right partners at the right time, coming to the table with the requirements versus relying on the partner to elicit those requirements. Any other general advice for CRM leaders who might be embarking on a CRM transformation project as things stand at the moment?
So I think building good partnerships. It's kind of my style, but people may have other approaches. But the thing that's worked for me is making sure you build good partnerships with Salesforce, the software vendor, as well as your partners. And so try to set it up and make it a win-win for both teams versus us versus them, or a confrontational relationship. So I think good solid partnerships go a long way and kind of help. They'll kind of bend over backwards to make you successful. So I think making sure you have that. Salesforce has always been a great partner throughout my career, but making sure those you pay attention to that, and then choose good partners that fit well with your company, and kind of build those relationships. I think is super important.
Now, the obvious metric I know you can track is sales, and I kind of tongue-in-cheek joked about that earlier. But how else are you measuring success? Is there any other KPI metric that you can use to measure success? Because you didn't necessarily, unless we did, I don't know, but it didn't sound like there's a user adoption issue of using the CRM or anything like that. So how if you're reflecting on whether Salesforce has been a success in the business, sales is one metric, but any other metrics you're looking at to be able to say, yeah, 10 out of 10 it is,
Yeah, I mean, obviously, driving revenue and saving costs are always big things we strive to. There's a lot of influences on that. But as we go through each project that we work on, we do try to upfront kind of identify what are the key things we're trying to solve, and then try to measure. It's much more on a smaller scale than I think you were describing, but things like we implemented omni-channel and sales engagement, and so one of the metrics was how quickly are we following up on leads, and so we kind of set a goal, and then we're able to measure that. And so we just, that's just an example of how we try to, for projects we work on, we're better at it on some projects than others, but we do try to identify what the business value is on before we embark on a project, and come back and circle back and see if we achieved that. And if we don't, why? And we've had projects where we've exceeded expectations.
I always ask this question every episode, so this episode's no different. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being terrible, 10 being fantastic, how would you rate your overall outcome with your Salesforce project?
So I would probably say a 7 or 8, so 7.5 maybe.
Depending on the day.
Yeah, I mean, I would say an 8. I don't want to be. I mean, honestly, I think I do think it was a big success. It wasn't perfect by any means, and we still have challenges like everybody. But I mean, overall, so almost every employee in the company uses it on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. Like everyone's, and our most teams are in Salesforce, all day, every day, and a lot of our processes end to end kind of live in Salesforce. So I think it's been a success.
So is that 8 on the implementation or the end product, or both?
I think both is kind of what, just kind of the end result as we're, as I reflect back now on kind of what we did and what we accomplished.
So in terms of the end product, like what features do you think, or system changes that you need to make change to really like get that to a 10 or like a solid platform?
Uh, so one of our, and I haven't talked about this, but one of our kind of visions for the system going in is we wanted our CX, like the different teams that use Salesforce heavily, for it to be their one pane of glass, their one system of engagement. And so the one thing that maybe disappoints me is it's not 100%. It's they do most of their work in one tool, but they do from time to time have to go pivot to the ERP, or go to a spreadsheet for to look at some data. And so that's constantly something that we're looking and trying to achieve. And so I would love it if they didn't do anything. I mean, I think we've done a really good job of it, but I think there's more work to be done there. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I mean, that just kind of never ends because unless you're like
Yeah,
literally deprecating the other system, at some point you're gonna have to go like there's so many, you know, not just the data, right? It's not just seeing the data, but like triggering processes in the other system, like the account opening process or
yeah,
viewing the order or checking with the warehouse or, all of that kind of stuff. It kind of never ends. Um, the
yep,
promise of Agent Force is that it's going to do that for you. So you can just ask the agent
right.
if it's not there. But we'll see. We'll see. That's still yet to be
Yeah, and
determined.
that order
Yeah.
management, we kind of envision that would move a lot of processes from our ERP into for the order to cash process, move a lot of those into Salesforce, and so that would help us achieve that goal because they wouldn't have to go to ERP to see it. They would it all live in the Salesforce core platform.
Or Data Cloud, I guess.
Yeah, our data cloud. Yeah, I mean, so that's the vision. Yeah, you're right. You may never get completely there, but we still strive. And there's definitely some things that it's like, oh wow, I wish we had that uh, working as it should work. But that's kind of a constant thing as well.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, well, like, what's next? Where do you see Salesforce evolving? Within the industry that you guys are in, which I guess you consider what consumer goods.
Uh, yeah, I mean, office furniture. I mean, we sell a lot. I mean, we do definitely sell to consumers for their home office, but a lot of what we sell is to businesses, and they use all of our channels to buy. So some small businesses just go onto Vari.com and buy 10 desks. So we kind of a lot of it's to businesses, but so I think probably like a lot of companies, figuring out how we can take advantage of Data Cloud and Agent Force. Data Cloud's not as big of a problem since a lot of stuff is in Salesforce, but I think and kind of the way we're thinking about that is kind of the first step is cleaning up our data and kind of creating that unique customer profile. I can't remember the exact term they use, but that unified profile is kind of I think the first step, and then I think a lot of other data cloud use cases, and then Agent Force will kind of spin off of that. So that's kind of at least how we're thinking about it now. And then, as I mentioned, order management is something we're additionally looking at.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, like, if anything you're excited about coming up. So putting aside, I guess, the Agent Force AI stuff, anything else?
Yeah, I guess the other thing and we've been talking to Salesforce about this for a long time, but our ultimate vision is instead of having two commerce platforms, Vari.com and business.vari.com, we'd love it to be one. Um, and so we kind of continue to have that conversation with them, and we'll see at some point, we would choose to go one way or the other for both of the functions. But that would just help because right now we have to maintain and merchandise and support two platforms, and so the goal would be eventually to be on a single commerce platform.
Good. I know we met at the Agent Force World Tour back end of last year after a few years of trying. Any conferences or events like either in Salesforce or external, unique to your industry that you've got on the calendar for the rest of this year, Jason? Dreamforce in October, will you guys be there?
That's kind of TBD at the moment. I would love to go. Not quite sure if we'll be able to make it out there this year, but definitely been there many years in the past and love to get out there. It's probably been too long since we've been there, but would love to, but is not confirmed at this moment.
Well, fingers crossed. All right, Jason. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story with us on the CRM Success Show today. A lot of ground we covered on this episode, so thank you again.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate the invite.
Absolutely. Anytime. For our listeners, please do not forget to subscribe to the CRM Success Show for more episodes featuring leaders like Jason who are shaping the future of the CRM.